Book of Heaven, Volume 12, Part 18. January 7th, 1921. The smile of Jesus, when he shall see the first fruits, the daughters of his will, living not in the human sphere, but in the divine sphere. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus came and surrounded my neck with his arm. And then he drew close to my heart, and holding his breast between his hands, he squeezed it over my heart, and rivulets of milk came out of it. And with those rivulets of milk, he filled my heart. And then he said to me, "My daughter, see how much I love you. I wanted to fill all your heart with the milk of grace and of love. So everything you shall say and do shall be nothing other than the outpouring of the grace with which I have filled you. You shall do nothing. You shall only place your will at the mercy of my will, and I shall do everything. You shall be nothing other than the sound of my voice, the bearer of my will, the destroyer of the virtues in the human way, and the resurrector of the virtues in the divine way, marked by an eternal, immense, infinite point." Having said this, he disappeared. After a little while he came back, and I was feeling all annihilated, especially in thinking about certain things that it is not necessary to say here. My affliction was at the summit, and I said to myself, "Is it possible that there can be this? My Jesus, do not permit it. Perhaps you want the will, but not the act of this sacrifice." And then in my hard state in which I find myself, I aspire to nothing but heaven. And Jesus, coming out from my interior, burst into a sob of crying. I could hear that sob reverberating in heaven and on earth. But as the sob was about to end, a smile took over that, like the sob, reverberated in heaven and on earth. I remained enchanted, and my Jesus told me, "My beloved daughter, after so much sorrow that creatures give me in these sad times, to the point of making me cry, and since it is the crying of a god, it reverberates in heaven and on earth, a smile shall take over, that shall fill heaven and earth with gladness. And this smile shall arise on my lips when I see the first fruits, the daughters of my will, living not in the human sphere, but in the divine sphere. I shall see them all marked by the eternal, immense, infinite will. I shall see that eternal point that has life only in heaven, flowing over the earth and molding souls with its infinite principles, with the divine acting, with the multiplication of acts in one single act. And just as creation came out from the Fiat, in the Fiat shall it be completed. So only the daughters of my will, in the Fiat, shall complete everything. And in my Fiat, that shall take life in them, I shall receive complete love, glory, reparation, thanksgiving, and praise, and for everything and for everyone. My daughter, things return there, where they come from. Everything came out from the Fiat, and in the Fiat it shall all come to me. They shall be few, but in the Fiat They shall give me everything. January 10th, 1921. The Fiat Mihi of the Most Holy Virgin. God wants a second yes in His will. The Fiat of Luisa. I was concerned about what is written above, and was saying to myself, I don't know what Jesus wants from me. Yet He knows how bad I am, and how I am good at nothing. And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, My daughter, remember that years ago I asked you whether you wanted to live life in my will? And since I wanted you in my will, I wanted you to pronounce your yes in my own will. This yes was bound to an eternal point, and to a will that shall have no end. This yes is in the center of my volition, and is surrounded by infinite immensity. And if it wants to get out, it almost cannot find the way. Therefore, at your little oppositions, at some discontent of yours, I laugh and I amuse myself, seeing you like those people who are bound of their own will in the depth of the sea, and wanting to get out, they find nothing but water. And since they are bound in the depth of the sea, they feel the bother of wanting to get out. And in order to remain tranquil and happy, they plunge themselves even more into the depths of the sea. In the same way, in seeing you perplexed, as though wanting to get out, and unable to do so, bound by your own yes, you plunge yourself even more into the depths of my will. I laugh and I amuse myself. And then, do you think it is something trivial and easy to move from within my will? You would move an eternal point. And if you knew what it means to move an eternal point, you would tremble with fright. Then he added, The first yes in my fiat I asked of my dear mamma. And oh, power of her fiat in my will! As soon as the divine fiat met with the fiat of my mamma, the two became one. My fiat raised her, divinized her, overshadowed her, and without human intervention, she conceived me, Son of God. Only in my fiat could she conceive me. My fiat communicated to her the immensity, the infinity, the fecundity, in a divine manner. And this is why the immense, the eternal, the infinite one could be conceived in her. As soon as she said, Fiat mihi, not only did she take possession of me, but she overshadowed all creatures, all created things together. She felt all the lives of creatures within herself, and from that moment she began to act as mother and queen of all. How many portents does this yes of my mamma not contain? If I wanted to tell them all, you would never finish hearing them. Now, a second yes in my will I asked of you, and you, though trembling, pronounced it. This yes in my volition shall have its portents. It shall have a divine fulfillment. You follow me and sink deeper into the immense sea of my will, and I shall take care of everything. My mamma did not think about how I would get to conceive myself in her. She only said, Fiat mihi, and I took care of the way in which to be conceived. So you shall do. January 17th, 1921. The Fiat Mihi of the Most Holy Virgin had the same power of the creative fiat. The third fiat shall be the fulfillment and completion of the prayer taught by Jesus. The fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra. I felt my poor mind immersed in the immense sea of the divine volition. Everywhere I could see the imprint of the fiat. I saw it in the sun, and it seemed to me that the echo of the fiat in the sun brought me the divine love that darts through me, that wounds me, that flashes through me. And I, on the wings of the fiat of the sun, rose up to the Eternal One, and brought in the name of the whole human family the love that darted through the Supreme Majesty, that wounded him, that flashed through him. And I said, in your fiat you gave me all this love, and only in the fiat can I return it to you. I looked at the stars, and I could see the fiat in them, and in their sweet and meek twinkling, this fiat brought me the pacific love, the sweet love, the hidden love, the compassionate love in the very night of sin. And I, in the fiat of the stars, brought to the throne of the Eternal One, in the name of all, the pacific love, in order to put peace between heaven and earth, the sweet love of the loving souls, the hidden love of many others, the love of the creatures, when after sin they return to God. But who can say all that I understood and did in so many fiats with which I saw all creation strewn? I would be too long, and therefore I stop here. Then my sweet Jesus took my hands in his, and clasping them tightly, he told me, my daughter, the fiat is all full of life. Even more, it is life itself, and therefore all lives and all things come out from within the fiat. From my fiat, creation came out. Therefore, in each created thing, one can see the imprint of the fiat. From the fiat mihi of my dear mamma, pronounced in my volition, having the same power of my creative fiat, redemption came out. So there is nothing in redemption that does not contain the imprint of the fiat mihi of my mamma. Even my very humanity, my steps, the works, the words, were sealed by her fiat mihi. My pains, the wounds, the thorns, the cross, my blood, had the imprint of her fiat mihi, because things carry the imprint of the origin from which they came out. My origin in time was the fiat mihi of the Immaculate Mamma. Therefore all my operating carries the mark of her fiat mihi. So in each sacramental host, there is her fiat mihi. If man rises from sin, if the newborn is baptized, if heaven opens to receive souls, it is the fiat mihi of my mamma that marks, that follows everything, and from it everything proceeds. O power of the fiat! It rises at each instant, it multiplies, and it makes itself life of all goods. Now I want to tell you why I asked for your fiat, your yes, in my will. I want my prayer that was taught, the fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra. This prayer, of so many centuries, of so many generations, to have its fulfillment and completion. This is why I wanted another yes in my will, another fiat containing the creative power. I want the fiat that rises at each instant, that multiplies for all. I want in one soul my same fiat that rises to my throne, and with its creative power brings upon earth the life of the fiat on earth as it is in heaven. Surprised and annihilated in hearing this, I said, "Jesus, what are you saying? And yet you know how bad I am and incapable of anything." And he, "My daughter, it is my usual way to choose the most abject, incapable, and poor souls for my greatest works. My very mamma had nothing extraordinary in her exterior life, no miracles, not a sign that would make her be distinguished from other women. Her only distinction was perfect virtue, to which almost no one paid attention. And if to other saints I gave the distinction of miracles, and others I adorned with my wounds, to my mamma, nothing, nothing. Yet she was the portent of portents, the miracle of miracles, the true and perfect crucified. No one else like her. I usually act like a master who has two servants. One seems a giant, Herculean, capable of everything. The other one, small, short, incapable, seems to be good at nothing, not an important service. If the master keeps him, it is more out of charity, and also for his amusement. Now, having to send a million, a billion, to another country, what does he do? He calls the little one, the incapable one, and entrusts the great sum to him, saying to himself, "If I entrust it to the giant, all shall fix their attention on him. Thieves shall assail him. They may rob him. And if he defends himself with his Herculean strength, he may remain wounded. I know that he is capable, but I want to spare him. I do not want to expose him to the obvious danger. On the other hand, this little one, knowing him to be incapable, no one shall pay attention to him. No one would think that I might entrust such an important sum to him, and so he shall come back safe and sound." The poor incapable one is surprised that the master would trust him, when he could use the giant. And all trembling and humble, he goes to deposit the great sum, with no one deigning to look at him. And safe and sound he returns to his master, more trembling and humble than before. So I do. The greater the work I want to do, the more I choose abject, poor, ignorant souls, with no exteriority that might draw attention upon them. The abject state of the soul shall serve as safe custody for my work. The thieves of self-esteem, of love of self, shall not pay attention to her, knowing her inability. And she, humble and trembling, shall carry out the office entrusted by me, knowing that not herself, but I, myself, did everything in her. January 24th, 1921. The third fiat shall bring to completion the glory and the honor of the fiat of creation, and shall be confirmation and development of the fruits of the fiat of redemption. These three fiats shall veil the most holy Trinity upon earth. I was feeling annihilated in thinking about this blessed fiat. but my lovable Jesus wanted to increase my confusion. It seems that he wants to make fun of me, proposing to me astounding things and almost incredible, taking pleasure in seeing me confused and more annihilated. And what is worse, I am forced to write them by obedience, to my greater torment. So while I was praying, my sweet Jesus leaned his head against mine, sustaining his forehead with his hand, and a light coming from his forehead told me, "My daughter, the first fiat was pronounced in creation without the intervention of any creature. The second fiat was pronounced in redemption, and I wanted the intervention of the creature, and I chose my mamma as fulfillment of the second fiat. Now, in fulfillment, I want to pronounce the third fiat, and I want to pronounce it through you. I have chosen you for the fulfillment of the third fiat. This third fiat shall bring to completion the glory and the honor of the fiat of creation, and shall be confirmation and development of the fruits of the fiat of redemption. These three fiats shall veil the most holy Trinity upon earth, and I shall have the fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven. These three fiats shall be inseparable. One shall be life of the other. They shall be one and triune, but distinct among themselves. My love wants it. My glory demands it. Having unleashed the first two fiats from the womb of my creative power, it wants to unleash the third fiat, for my love can no longer contain it, and this in order to complete the work that came out of me. Otherwise the work of creation and of redemption would remain incomplete. On hearing this, I remained not only confused, but as though stunned, and I said to myself, "Is all this possible? There are so many, and if it is true that he has chosen me, it seems to me that this is one of the usual follies of Jesus." And then what could I do or say from within a bed, half crippled and inept as I am? Could I keep up with the multiplicity and infinity of the fiat of creation and of redemption? My fiat being similar to the other two fiats, I must run together with them, multiply myself with them, do the good that they do, braid myself with them. Jesus, think of what you are doing. I am not for this much. But who can say all the nonsense I spoke? Now my sweet Jesus came back and told me, "My daughter, calm yourself. I choose whomever I please. Know, however, that I begin all of my works between myself and one single creature, and then they are diffused. In fact, who was the first spectator of the fiat of my creation? Adam, and then Eve. It surely wasn't a multitude of people. Only after years and years did crowds and multitudes of people become spectators of it. And in the second fiat, my mamma was the only spectator. Not even Saint Joseph knew anything. And my mamma found herself more than in your condition. The greatness of the creative force of my work that she felt within herself was such that confounded. She did not feel the strength to breathe a word to anyone. And if Saint Joseph then knew it, it was because I manifested it to him. So this fiat germinated like seed inside her virginal womb. The ear of grain was formed in order to multiply it, and then it came out to daylight. But who were the spectators? Very few. And in the room of Nazareth, the only spectators were my dear mamma and Saint Joseph. Then, when my most holy humanity grew up, I went out and I made myself known, but not to all. Then it diffused more, and it shall still diffuse. So it shall be for the third fiat. It shall germinate in you. The ear of grain shall form. Only the priest shall have knowledge of it. Then a few souls. And then it shall diffuse. It shall diffuse, and shall do the same course as creation and redemption. The more crushed you feel, the more the ear of the third fiat grows in you and is fecundated. Therefore, be attentive and faithful. February 2nd, 1921. The third fiat must run together with the other two fiats. These three fiats have one same value and power, because they contain the creative power. Continuing in my usual state, I was fusing all of myself in the divine volition, and was saying to myself, "My Jesus, I want to love you, and I want so much love as to compensate for the love of all generations that have been and that shall be. But who can give me so much love as to be able to love for all? My love, in your will there is the creative strength. Therefore, in your will, I myself want to create so much love as to compensate for and surpass the love of all, and everything that all creatures are obliged to give God as our Creator." But while I was doing this, I said, "How much nonsense I am speaking!" And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, indeed, in my will there is the creative strength. From within one single fiat of mine came out billions and billions of stars. From the fiat mihi of my mamma, from which redemption had its origin, come out billions and billions of acts of grace that communicate themselves to souls. These acts of grace are more beautiful, more resplendent, more varied than the stars. And while the stars are fixed and do not multiply, the acts of grace multiply to infinity. In each instant they run, they attract creatures, they delight them, they strengthen them, and give them life. Ah, if creatures could see in the supernatural order of grace, they would hear such harmonies. They would see such an enchanting scene as to believe that which is their paradise. Now, the third fiat too must run together with the other two fiats. It must multiply to infinity, and in each instant it must give as many acts for as many acts of grace as are unleashed from my womb, for as many stars, for as many drops of water, and for as many created things as the fiat of creation unleashed. It must blend with them and say, "As many acts as you are, so many I do." These three fiats have one same value and power. You disappear. It is the fiat that acts, and therefore you too can say, in my omnipotent fiat, "I want to create so much love, so many adorations, so many blessings, so much glory to my God, as to compensate for everyone and for everything." Your acts shall fill heaven and earth. They shall multiply with the acts of creation and redemption, and shall become one. All this shall seem astounding and incredible to some. In that case, they would have put my creative power in doubt. And besides, when it is I who want it and give this power, every doubt ceases. Am I perhaps not free to do whatever I want and to give to whomever I want? You, be attentive. I shall be with you. I shall overshadow you with my creative strength, and I shall accomplish what I want upon you. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 12, Part 18. Fiat.